Hi, and welcome to Newsreel with Joe and Neil.
I'm Joe.
I'm Neil, and this week we're going to be following up on our discussion last week of the crazy incident in Turkey involving Saudi dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Crikey. I mean, it was so brazen and just gruesome. The details, like, we were thinking, like, no self-respecting leader would be even one step, even 4 steps removed from that kind of thing. It would never happen. Or at least we left it open that surely this could have been something done, staged, or done, not staged, I mean, actually took place, but done with a view to blackening MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. But, I mean, since then, they've all but admitted, Saudi government, that, yeah, we did it. But we're seeing them squirm and try to talk their way out of it and give different explanations for what happened or didn't happen.
And threaten,
make big threats directly to Trump and by implication to anyone else who seriously wants to punish, sanction, or otherwise bring justice to this crime. But yeah, no, it's what it appears to be, and it's it's like the curtains pulled back, really, really wide, just for a moment in world history, and yeah, that's what governments do. That's certainly what the Saudi Arabian government does. It's certainly what the real king, I suppose, of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince, is capable of doing. And this is the same guy, of course, who's been going around and spreading his money to improve Saudi Arabia's image by making some token gestures to clean up Saudi Arabia's image, and of course by implication his own as well.
You have to wonder about a country that gets all the plaudits and makes a big deal about allowing women to drive cars, like in the year 2018.
Right.
You have to wonder how that's something that is like, oh, isn't it fantastic? He's progressive. It's like, what reality what world do we live in, like, where that is something that you get a pat in the back for, But of course,
what else did he? The other one I heard was that people were allowed to finally go to cinemas. I had to go. What do you mean allowed to go to cinemas? For 4 decades, there have been no public screenings of private, movies, wherever it may be from, Hollywood mostly, I suppose. They've been banned officially to normal Saudi population. Now, of course, every Saudi princeling has a cinema in his own house, so he's watching whatever he wants. But the Saudi population of some 30 million people, they don't, until recently when they were finally allowed to, it's been 4 decades.
Mm-hmm.
Where they don't get any.
But you have to respect their culture, Neil. Cultural diversity.
Oh, sure, but that's a bit harsh. It's a bit extreme, no?
I don't know.
I mean, that is so far beyond. I mean, what was thrown at the USSR was that it was isolationist and it was, cutting itself off from the rest of the world. But I mean, I'm pretty sure Western movies were shown right throughout, certainly after Stalin died.
Yeah.
And all this time, there's been this country, key friend and ally.
Yeah.
As we've been reminded nonstop this week, of the West, that is just so extremely totalitarian, backwards. It's everything that so many countries get accused of being. It's all concentrated in every respect in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Yet they're the golden boys for the West. Yeah. How anybody can, I mean, I know it's been said many times before, and anybody with any sense has seen it and just goes, well, what can you do about it? But how anybody can take Western leaders seriously when they talk about, their values and all that kind of stuff. If you have values, then you stand up for those values, right? In all possible cases. But obviously they haven't been standing up for them in Saudi Arabia, where they're pretty much like they're back in, I don't know, Middle Ages, maybe. I don't know. It's probably as bad as the Middle Ages or worse. Feudal times, whatever, where there was all sorts of oppression going on. And that's who they support. So how can you take any Western leader seriously when they talk about their values, when they do, they're very close, when their best friend, let's say. Imagine you heard someone saying, I stand for all the wonderful, noble values, and then you see that their best friend is a serial killer. Would you believe them?
Of course not.
Of course, there's reasons for it, and those reasons are very well known why they have these double standards with Saudi Arabia. And the double standards with Saudi Arabia have been talked about before. I think several years ago, Rand Paul, I think, was talking to Wolf Blitzer on CNN about the war in Yemen a few years ago, about the Saudis and bombing Yemen and killing people in Yemen. And Rand Paul was condemning the Saudis for killing people in Yemen. And Wolf Blitzer chimed in and said, yeah, but there's a lot of jobs associated with that war. Basically, a lot of American jobs are dependent on that war. So what do you do in a situation where you want to have all these noble values in the world, but i.e. like not even a noble value, just a fairly basic value of don't kill innocent people, but your job depends upon you killing innocent people. What are you going to do?
That's Wolf Blitzer, one of the leaders of #the resistance against Donald Trump, who, when he makes the same statement last week, the shock and indignation on MSNBC and CNN and New York Times. How can you say that? Well, what about more? But they know it. They're not harping on it too loudly. They're harping on it a bit, but not too loudly because, Wolf Blitzer said it. Everyone knows it.
Yeah. So it's hypocrisy we don't like, and the fact that people don't, it's not officially recognized more often. I mean, Trump did actually recognize it. I mean, he said more or less the same thing as Wolf Blitzer said. Trump said it just this week in relation to the Khashoggi, the killing of Khashoggi and Saudi Arabia. He said, that he's not going to back out of that deal or the money that is promised to America from sales of American weapons to Saudi Arabia, because there's a lot of jobs dependent on it.
Indeed.
Trump said that explicitly. So there you go. What are you going to do? Tough shit. That's the world you live in. Get real. And of course, this has been going on with this relationship with Saudi Arabia has been going on for decades, and it's very much tied up. It's not just that, it's not just that there's a few jobs or a large number of jobs, let's say, associated with arms sales to Saudi Arabia, American jobs that are dependent on arms sales to Saudi Arabia. This is a relationship, interdependent or a very dependent relationship that goes back 40 years with Saudi Arabia. And for all those years, Saudi Arabia has been an atavistic kind of Stone Age from a moral point of view, a Stone Age society, one of the most corrupt and disgusting boils that has ever appeared on the surface of the earth.
And just to clarify, what makes it disgusting is not so much that it chooses to live like that, but that it's a formally like that. And the rank and file, normal Saudis must live like that. But the elites who enforce that absolutely do not live by those standards.
Well, no.
We know they go abroad,
yeah,
and they party like
they're not religious at all,
no.
And they're not strict Muslims. Like they love a lot of them are homosexual. Like I'm not sure if homosexuality is. I think it is still outlawed in Saudi Arabia,
probably.
And people are put in prison for being homosexual, while a lot of the royal family. Saudi Arabia is basically made up of thousands of members of an inbred bunch of pseudo-royals who all just married each other. So a lot of inbreeding going on there, and they've produced over many years, over decades, they've produced thousands and thousands of members of the royal family, cousins, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins, their wives, their children, all that kind of stuff. And that's who ruled Saudi Arabia, basically. Obviously there's a hierarchy within that, with the big smiling MBS more or less at the top of it now, but they're the ones who run Saudi Arabia and have done since it was created back in the early 20th century, with the connivance of the West for very specific reasons, for oil back then, and it's oil today. 100 years later, it's oil is the motivating factor as well, and the way that the US has invested, and the US is based on basically its economy is very much dependent on the global oil supply and the way the global oil supply works. Specifically the petrodollar, the way that the vast majority of oil in the world is traded in dollars, which gives America massive advantages, obviously, compared to the rest of the world. That's why America is the greatest country in the world, quote unquote, because they have had a free ride for, certainly in the last 40 years, they've had a free ride as a result of all of the oil trade in the world being denominated in dollars. And that's why they protected Saudi Arabia, because they can't do anything but protect Saudi Arabia, because if Saudi Arabia goes, if the system, that system that is in place with that relationship between the US and Saudi Arabia, if something happens to that, if it falls apart, then America falls apart as well.
Yeah.
Basically, America will experience, a severe economic crisis, and it will no longer be a world power. So that's why you have, like, if you look at the slideshow we have up today, one of the pictures on there is a magazine that was released by an American printing organization that has some kind of ties to Trump, but it's ties to all politicians. Basically, a big media conglomerate in the US that printed a magazine with MBS on the front of it. The New Kingdom, it's called. So it's a glossy Saudi magazine, basically. Got him on the front. Saudi Vision 2030, blurbs are our closest Middle East ally, destroying terrorism. Controlling staggering 4 trillion business empire. Improving lives of his people and hopes for peace. Not Khashoggi, obviously. Chopped him up. But and not the ones that they crucify. Actually crucify people. That's an example you can say about Saudi Arabia, is that one way that they put people to death, is they crucify them. Apart from chopping off body parts and stuff, they also crucify.
Public beheadings.
Yeah, well, that's...
Public hangings.
Yeah, public hangings, you could say, isn't... the last person hanged in the UK, I think, was in the 70s. 1961, 62 or something like that. So hanging, you can quibble about that, but, chopping people's hands off and stuff for stealing things and public beheadings, where a crowd gathers around and that kind of stuff. It's not really civilized, if you have pretensions to be civilized, it's not civilized. If you want to think that the world is, and we in the West are much, further along from that, from a moral point of view, in the way that we look at the world and the things that we will and won't accept, if you think that we're light years ahead of, like, those barbaric practices from yesteryear, from previous ages, well, we're not. If we support people who still do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you support people who still do it, even obviously, there's no beheadings in the US or whatever, or in Western countries. In the US, they still electrocute people to death, which isn't that far, isn't that much better. But, so people just don't have a very realistic understanding of where human society is at, basically. They don't, they're full of all sorts of fantasies and dreams and ideas about where we're actually at, when where we really are at is in front of them every day. And there's just cognitive dissonance goes on. I think it drives people a bit nuts, If they just accept the fact that, the world's a bit of a shit show, everybody lies, particularly your political leaders, they're all lying to you, it's all nonsense, it's all for your distraction. And, more or less just, watch it, with disgust to the extent that you're able. But, if you want the world to be different, like, to quote Gandhi, I suppose, I think Gandhi said something along these lines, be the change you want to be in the world, be the change you want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But not that you would try and change the world necessarily, but, if you want to be evolved and advanced and holier than thou and very moral and all that kind of stuff and hold to very, lofty ideals, then go ahead and do it yourself.
Act it rather than talk about it.
Yeah, but don't expect the world to do it as well. Get off the street. What are you being activists for, like, demanding change? You want the world to change instead of changing yourself. That's what these activists do. The ones who are out screaming and shouting about all of society's ills. They want society to change for them, so that they don't have to. And it doesn't happen because you're ruled by a bunch of nut job psychos like people like MBS and the people in the West who are his friends, who condone and turn a blind eye to chopping some guy up while he's still alive because you don't like what he says, because he's seen as a threat to you. As Khashoggi. So, that's what happens. That's where we're at. Things haven't changed. Jump back to any time you want in the past. Pick the worst time you want you can read about in human civilization when barbarity ruled supreme. That's where we're at. There's no difference. Get over yourselves.
Yeah. And instead, it's all the entire litany of crimes and factors that make up a backward society are instead projected on Russia.
Right.
I mean, it's a classic that these two things happen in the same year and that they can be juxtaposed right there in your face. You've got the issue of the Skripals and the poisoning, blamed on Russia, very tepid evidence linking it to Russia. The guy survives, of course, Sergei Skripal and his daughter. Disappeared now. No one knows where they are. And then you've got this thing that comes up where it's like pretty clear and getting increasingly clear by the day that it's as bad as the Turks were leaking to the media in the first few days after it, earlier this month. And that they have evidence, which is why this isn't easily dismissed, and why people are panicking the world over. I mean, Trump is scrambling to cover for this, but others less so. I mean, every leader in Europe that I'm familiar with making it. Maybe the Brits are also quiet. Well, pending the investigation, we'll make our statement, kind of thing. But the others are calling for investigation. Of course, it's all righteous posturing as well. But at least they're doing that, You mentioned the basic relationship that's historical for the U.S.'s apologies and covering for this kind of thing. There are also more immediate payouts, like immediate reasons for why the U.S. can't just ditch Saudi Arabia right at this time. First up, in 3 weeks, the anti-Iran sanctions kick in. And everyone, it doesn't take a genius to figure it. Everyone's talking about it. They need the Saudis on board with making up for whatever oil supplies take a hit.
Well, an embargo, supposedly, total embargo on Iranian oil,
right?
To take several million barrels.
It's roughly 3% of global supply.
Yeah, a few million barrels a day, whatever, out of the oil supply in the world, and they need the Saudis to keep that, because that is enough to kind of make the markets jittery and create a bit of a crisis, So they need the Saudis to increase their production, and so the Saudis have that over America, And also it's obviously tied to, the price of oil is very much tied to America's economy and to other, major oil consumers like America, and also America's a big oil producer as well. So it's all business and keeping.
In Syria, another one is that we remember that Trump said we wanted whatever number of U.S. troops, official troops and mercenaries that are in eastern Syria, he wanted to take them out. And Saudi Arabia convinced, I don't know if that's exactly how it took place, but they convinced him to keep them there. And just actually 2 days ago, there was another U.S. airstrike. Some 60 plus people were killed near Deir ez-Zor, mostly civilians. The only reason the U.S. is still there is because Trump has managed to get Saudi Arabia to pledge money and commitment to a Syria stabilization fund. So, yeah, that's another. I mean, that's what I mean by immediate consequences. It's like this couldn't come at a worse time for the United States in what it wants to do in the Middle East. And of course, because of Saudi Arabia is all over the news now, it's finally being talked about widely in the press that Saudi Arabia has been bombing Yemen for the last almost 4 years now. And the US's role in that, and at least on paper, at least in Congress, the serious people are saying we might want to reconsider our support for this, the proxy war in Yemen. It's at least getting on the record now.
Well, I mean, there's a story, a perfect story that summed it up. This was money that was promised, but when Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, arrived in Riyadh to have discussions about what happened to Khashoggi with MBS on the same day, the American or the Saudis sent $100 million to the US, landed in American government bank accounts, basically $100 million on the day that he's there to kind of like figure out, I'm going to really hold his feet to the fire on this one. Here's $100 million. Of course, $100 million was supposedly for, who knows what it's for, but officially it was for that the Saudis had promised Trump to aid in American efforts to civilize areas in Syria that liberated from the Islamic State, i.e. areas that Americans were holding in Syria. America's occupying certain parts of Syria. So the Saudis are throwing $100 million at America to fund that. There you go.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, I'm going to really pin you to the wall on this one. Well, if I give you $100 million, maybe you'd like pin me a bit less. Maybe.
It's just business.
Disgusting. Like, it's stupid. The whole thing's ridiculous, you know. It's hard to take any of it seriously, and see, you know, it's hard to see it in any other way other than just pure unfettered corruption and money and greed. That's what's behind all of it, you know. So,
Trump himself is caught up in it too, because since the 80s he's been lauding the Saudis because of their investment in his companies and property in New York. And it's very recent too, just up to 3 years ago. No, not 3 years ago. It's older than that. But in the early 2000s, the Saudi government paid something like $12 million for the 45th floor of Trump Tower near the UN. There was at least one other major sale for $4.5 million to a Trump company that supposedly saved it. It was going under.
It was just about every politician
exactly
in America.
It's not unique.
Obama, Clinton. Look, talk about Clinton. Clinton, the Clinton Foundation. Hundreds of millions of dollars from the Saudis over the course of their... And that's money that's going more or less to the Clintons. Like, so, I mean, it's the whole lot of them. You know, Trump's probably the least... in that respect, he's not probably in the top 10 of people who are beholden to Saudi Arabian money.
Yeah.
I mean, that in that article, front page article, they made reference to a $4 trillion business empire run by the Saudis. $4 trillion. Saudi Arabia.
I have a couple of figures. I don't know how it ties in with the 4 trillion. If 4 trillion might be the total worth of their investments.
Right.
There's an article in The Guardian reflecting in hindsight, given what's just happened, about MBS's tour of Europe, mainland Europe, then the UK, and then the United States. It was earlier this year. You probably remember it because he was meeting everyone from Tim Cook of Apple, Mark Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin of Google. And you had this, obviously it's jarring, right? These are all the lefties, right? The resistance against Trump, some of them anyway. The red carpets rolled out for Mohammed bin Salman, quasi-plausibly because he's on a massive charm offensive and the press is talking about how he's liberalizing his country and so on. The Guardian did this article now, in hindsight, looking at all of the things one would do. It's a hypothetical. So they write, landing in London, MBS might have dispensed with his chauffeur-driven car, travelling into the capital by Uber, while his aides finalised his itinerary on smartphones powered with chips designed by Cambridge-based ARM Holdings. After glad-handing bank chiefs in the city, London, any investment plans they discussed could have been further developed using cloud office app Slack, whatever that is. On the US leg of his journey, perhaps slumming it in the Accor Hotel, MBS and his entourage might have dialed up a plate of the Saudi national rice dish Kabsa from delivery service DoorDash. Later, they could have relaxed by playing computer games partly designed by simulation technology firm Improbable. It goes on. It's name-dropping all of these startups, or some of them established, like Uber, that the Saudis have put a lot of money into. And the value that they give of these startups, specifically through a public investment fund for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is 250 billion to date. But the reason he went on this big charm offensive earlier in the year is because he was coming and telling people he had another $2 trillion to sink into US firms. Obviously, that if he's meeting Sergey Brin, that includes Google and Facebook, and who knows what else. There's so much that's officially listed. There's so much that's potentially and officially, discussed as being listed, and then God knows what is unofficial through anonymous funds via London or New York and Wall Street. You can sort of you use the facts of the numbers of companies and funds that are actually declared, and then you have to use your imagination to extend that out further and to get a sense of how structurally intertwined Saudi oil money, the petrodollar, is with the West, in particular, of course, the United Kingdom and the United States. It's like you can't pull the dagger out because someone will bleed to death. So they both have a dagger in each other, and it's like no one goes, because then that's curtains. That's why you're going to hear all this talk about sanctions. It'll go to the hilt, how out here moral is, and sanctions and proper investigation, and it'll just go away, or it'll quieten right down. The Saudis have a latest version that they'll work something out. I think they'll work something out with Turkey.
Well, Turkey's already
Turkey holds the cards here. What's going on there? Because the Turks clearly knew from the outset, so they were listening in, and they have evidence, and the Saudis know it, which is why they're playing ball. They can't just deny it. They did deny it for 2 weeks, but that didn't work.
He said nothing for 2 weeks. Yeah.
So
I mean, the Turks don't have a. The Turks are playing a regional game, obviously, as well. They're not necessarily. The Turks are perpetually these days undecided as to what, are flip flopping into, are trying to play both sides against the middle in a certain sense. So, and they're maybe eyeing the future. Obviously, Turkey and Russia have close relationship now and stuff, so they're trying to eye the future and to see what would happen. But there's not really a lot of love lost between Saudi Arabia and Turkey, although they're not enemies by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the Turks just took it as from the point of view of, well, listen, we're not that close friends, and you just killed some guy on our territory. Technically, okay, it's your territory. It's a Saudi embassy, but it's in Istanbul, so and it's pretty egregious, and so we're not going to cover this up, obviously. You know what I mean? So and they came out with the details of what they say. They have evidence that of how Khashoggi was killed and who did it. It was, they have released video evidence and all that kind of stuff, so that kind of stuff would probably have to come out eventually anyway, and the Turks wouldn't want to seem to be complicit in it in any way, so they're just going to out the Saudis on it. But the Saudis don't give a damn, obviously, for the reasons you just explained. They don't care. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They can do what they want. And to hell with world opinion. People these days, I mean, who's the backlash going to come from? The ordinary people who are outraged that, Khashoggi would, be killed in this way, that or a so-called reformer would be killed in this way, and people are outraged. And what, this MBS and his clan and anybody in Western countries care what the people think at this point?
Well, momentarily.
Have your whines, whatever, cry and shout and complain, and then just shut the hell up.
But momentarily it has everyone from Ted Cruz on the right.
Yeah, virtue signaling.
To, you name it, actors, Hollywood actors on the left, liberal left, saying the same things.
Doing a bit of virtue signaling, yeah.
Yeah.
Like they care.
It won't last. It'll soon be back to my tribe against your tribe.
It's not only the fact that the powers that be don't care, obviously, because they see this as just, well, that's the way the world works, and politicians see, plenty of a lot of politicians in Western countries are well aware that they themselves periodically kill people, extrajudicially, murder people they don't like. So it's just part of the, and the little people there who get upset about it, yeah, whatever, let them be upset, of course, but they just don't know how the world works, and even then, I would jump in and say, you know what, most people don't care either. about Khashoggi. Like, people don't care about him either. So, what are you shouting about? Well, it's terrible.
Yeah,
of course it is. Yeah, somebody gets chopped up while they're alive or whatever. What happened?
I'll take a slightly different view on that. I think they're shouting because they do care, but that what they care about is not a man's death. What they care about is their beliefs, the mythos. The mythos takes another hit. Year on year, they're piling up now quite fast. The mythos of the West is the best, the West is morally superior.
Yeah.
It takes a hit, and that hurts, and somebody's got to pay for that. Somebody's got to make it right again. And that was the message of Trump's campaign, make America great again, reinvigorate the mythos.
Mm-hmm.
America strong. A large part of it wasn't, militarily, yeah. America's, with the exception of Russia, pretty much undisputed physical champion. No one disputes that.
Mm-hmm.
But morally, they were starting to feel it, starting to doubt, what about our mission?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing all these things coming through the news, and I'm not liking it. Will somebody please, reinflate the mythos?
Yeah.
But as time goes on, there's these things that come out. It's like, you can just imagine. You can imagine like a lot of people, not just in the States, but in halls of power everywhere, going, "Oh my God, I can't believe they got caught doing that." Not, "Oh my God, I can't believe they did that."
Mm-hmm.
And they got caught doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do it in your embassy or whatever.
You don't do it in public. Basically, it was more or less public. Given the way that they did it, it was always going to be. it was going to come out like.
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand is how they didn't just decide to kind of like, kidnap him. They had a van in there that drove into the basement. Why didn't they put him in the van and take him away somewhere? Take him back to Saudi Arabia?
Take him back on that plane that was waiting on the tarmac.
Right, take him back on the plane, take him back to Saudi Arabia, accuse him of something, then, you
That's...
have all the scope to interrogate him and torture him, whatever you want, and then you can kind of like crucify him or something, because that's what they do in Saudi Arabia. And people say, "Oh, that's very bad, blah, blah, blah." It'd be a big hoot. But maybe, so I don't know, the people are just nuts. They just lost the plot, like.
Yeah. It's a step, yeah. It reminds me of Rendition after 9/11. And yeah, everyone was shocked and horrified. But that too was absorbed into reality as well. It's kind of, like Dick Cheney said, sometimes you got to do dirty to win. It's like a system has been set up and it was used. Even Gaddafi was having dissidents renditioned from Libya to God knows where, black site in Poland or Pakistan or wherever, to basically avail of the services provided by this new, effectively, institution set up by the United States precisely for people like Saudi dictators to take advantage of it. But here they're like, well, we'll just do it ourselves in the freaking embassy.
Mm-hmm.
Because of it's the arrogance. It's, I suppose,
it's his understanding of his unassailable position, of Saudi Arabia's unassailable position in the world order, basically. And that's what, when he came out with those list of threats, whenever Trump said that he would impose, there'd be harsh penalties or they'd be severely punished for if Khashoggi if they were responsible for Khashoggi's death, they came back with all this long list of things that they would do to basically destroy the world order.
We will have a Russian base in northern.
He said, "How do you want?" He said, "Yeah."
He
said, "Do you want oil at $400 a barrel? How would you like oil being denominated in something other than the dollar?" Right there, that's all he had to say basically, and then it's like, oops, America shuts up and changes its tune. So yeah, Saudi Arabia at this point totally controlled the USA, but they like it that way. It's a way that it's not that they're being manipulated in that situation. They're very willing participants because America gets an awful lot out of it as well.
Yeah.
America really, has been able to reign supreme for much of the last century because of its relationship with Middle Eastern oil and the way the relationship that they've kind of crafted, particularly with Saudi Arabia and its other Gulfy allies. There's a good description of. In just a paragraph of the petrodollar, basically, it's this system of the US dollar acting as global reserve currency in oil trade keeps the demand for dollar artificially high, and this enables the US to carry on printing dollars at a price of next to nothing that funds increased military spending and consumer spending on imports. There's no theoretical limit to the amount of dollars that can be printed. as long as the US has no serious challengers and other states have confidence in the US dollar, the system functions. So, and Saudi Arabia...
As long as other states have no alternatives, basically. I hear you, confidence in the US dollar, that's the kind of mantra they repeat, but what it physically, the manifestation of it
confidence in the US dollar in that situation means confidence in America as a military power to shape the world militarily the way it wants, to ensure that the petrodollar regime, the petrodollar system continues in place. So, and that's the reference to serious challengers. So as long as there's no serious military challengers who could push America aside, then everything is fine. And that's the reason you see this hysteria against Russia. It's an existential fight by Americans who see they see Russia as an existential threat to American hegemony, to America's position, top dog position in the world, and that is based very, very closely on, or is very closely related to the dollar as the reserve currency, the petrodollar, and the whole situation in the Middle East, and Russia's incursion in the Middle East. It's like it's a no-brainer. Like, there's nobody. Fucking hell, Jesus Christ! I mean, 2015, Russia enters into the Syrian conflict, and the American elite collectively shit their pants. Why? Oil. Done. There you go. That's the answer. And then as a result, since 2015, mostly, you have anti-Russia hysteria. You have Russia being accused of all these different things. How do people not make that connection? What kind of an idiot do you have to be to actually believe anything those people say about Russia when it has very, very clear geopolitical reasons? That this is a propaganda war because they hate Russia, because Russia is a near peer competitor that entered into the Middle East and, threatens, at least potentially, to upset that whole system of American hegemony that is based on oil in the Middle East. So Russia does that, enters into the game, threatens America, and then you have 3 years of Russia ate my homework. Russia made my wife sleep with another man. Russia made my dog shit on the carpet. And people fucking believe it. Believe that those allegations, like, Russia hacked our election. What the fuck are you talking? I mean, really?
Yeah.
It's actually
Russia is going to hack our upcoming elections.
Give me a break, idiots.
When that started coming out, I thought, Jesus, you can't be serious.
People just lobotomize yourselves. Anybody who believes that's just I don't know. Take your brain out and kick it down the road. You do not need it, obviously, at all. Because you're not thinking, you have no brain function whatsoever. Just leave a little part that is able to receive CNN or something for your daily dose to tell you what you should say in any given moment. That's all you need. Just replace it with some computer parts and a voice box that will make sounds for you.
That is the lobotomy in a way. The little part that's reserved for CNN.
Yeah.
Et al. Yeah. It's like a no-brainer.
Of course it is. But, that's what I don't understand. And I'm not being unduly harsh on people here. It's so obvious, and I don't understand why people can't see it. It's because they've been propagandized against. But really, the media talks BS, so apply it across the board to the media. Don't say that media talks BS, but this one doesn't. They all do. What's wrong with thinking for yourself? It's like the media's telling them 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah. Fear.
And
fear is a lot.
They have full capacity to figure out for themselves that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5. It actually equals 4. They have a brain that can do that. But instead they defer to the media telling them an obvious lie. Mm-hmm. And then they repeat it. Why? Why would you do that? As a supposedly, sane, intelligent human being.
Your salary might depend on it.
For most people, it's not their salaries. It depends on it. Something else.
Or for the people writing it, for
the people listening to it,
for the consumers, for the producers, for the creative propagandas, the activists.
Well, there's another problem with this aspect of this is that we shouldn't get too worked up about it because there's a fake, there's a kind of echo chamber or the appearance of a consensus, like a fake consensus that is presented to people primarily by well, it's by the media, by biased media, but also largely because of social media. You go on social media and you look at the debates that are happening on social media, and you think that everybody on social media in the English-speaking world, let's say, so all, 300 or 400 million people or whatever in the Western world, or 500 million people who are on social media speaking English, and even the ones that aren't speaking English, that they're all divided down the middle, that they're all either anti-Trump or lefty, or they're right-wingers or conservatives, whatever. And there was a interesting study, and I think this is close to the truth of the matter. It was an interesting study done recently. It polled a bunch of people, blah, 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 whatever. I can't remember the details of it, but I just got this piece from it here where it says, according to the report, 25% of Americans are traditional or devoted conservatives, and their views are far outside of the American mainstream. 8% of Americans are progressive activists, so like far lefties, and their views are even less typical. By contrast, 2/3 of Americans who don't belong to either extreme constitute the exhausted majority, and their members share a sense of fatigue with the polarized national conversation and a willingness to be flexible in their political viewpoints. And they also have a lack of voice in the national conversation. So those figures, whatever, but they're probably close enough. You might reduce the 25% of Americans being devoted conservatives, but it's probably something like 10 or 15% on each side, and you've got 70% or 60 to 70% of the population, a decent majority, who are not as kind of single-minded and interested in black and white thinking as you see from people on social media, who the ones who scream the most and shout the most and get the most attention and appear in most people's Twitter feeds.
Yeah, I think something like there's only 8 million or so, maybe more than that, Twitter users in the US, and only a percentage of those are active.
Mm-hmm.
And Twitter, by the way, is propped up with Saudi money via MBS. I mean, the very platforms we're using to express our horror of this, it's blood money. Just about most things are. On that point, that has it's both a blessing and a curse that 2/3 of people who are exhausted, or they're perfectly fine, they just don't care, or it's a blessing because it's a healthy response from this pounding of propaganda.
Mm-hmm. Patently false propaganda, black and white, oversimplified propaganda.
Dark and a lot. I mean, when it's news, I mean, it's dark. I mean, Saudis are dismembering people now. I mean, that's black. Obviously, wars, constant. That's black as well. So you would just close off to protect yourself. It's healthy. It's a healthy response. But there's also the curse aspect of it, which is that people are fickle. They may go with the flow. If there's a crisis, in times of crisis, 9/11, of course, Pearl Harbor, rally the people, the fickleness will put them in alignment temporarily with
but they have
whatever
to be,
the next dark turn is.
They have to be bludgeoned.
It also means they can't be relied on. So
no, you can't rely on them perpetually. But I think what you can rely on people down. For, let's say, at this point in history, is that if this is, I mean, it does seem to be a symptom of the political elite in the world, and particularly in the West, that they're more and more arrogant and more flagrant and barefaced about their corruption. That as that continues, you can probably rely on people eventually having enough of it, and not that necessarily be a good thing, because they'll still be corralled into one direction or another. But I think people eventually will, in some way or other, you'll see a reaction from the population to increasingly flagrant displays of corruption amongst so-called political elite, who are meant to be much, much better than that, who are expected to be much, much better than that by the people. So the more they move away from the role that is expected of them, the more likely you're going to get to a kind of breaking point where certain section of the population will just have had enough, and for the first time, maybe in a long time, people will be out in the streets and at the very least motivated by just having had enough of this bullshit. They can all be united, left and right, blue and red, whatever, Catholic, Protestant, and dissenter, as they say, will all be united by simply being exhausted with bullshit in general and corruption in high places. You can all agree that there's corruption in high places, or a large percent of the population, maybe that 66% or that 2/3 exhausted group of people are the ones who can all agree, despite their differences, so-called political differences, they can all agree that this system is rotten. And
then we can rise up and have our glorious revolution.
Probably not. You can, but you probably won't have a glorious revolution because we know that revolutions don't go very well, and within the revolution, the scum rises to the top in revolutions, so they go wrong as well. But that could be the next transition. Looking at it impartially, it would, it's just it will be the next transition phase in human evolution, or devolution. Whether or not, it probably won't be good, probably won't have a good outcome, but it'll be a change, let's say.
There are a few peripheral items connected with this murder of Khashoggi. One of the guys who was identified by the Turks as being part of the 15-member team who sent in with a bone saw. One of them was a forensic specialist, and that was his job. Apparently, that was he cuts the body up.
He's a Saudi state forensic pathologist whose expertise, his focus,
his autopsies
was mobile autopsies,
right?
I.e., autopsies out of the actual clinical lab. So we can do it on the fly type thing, like in an embassy in Turkey,
on an office table.
And dissection.
Well, one of the underlings, a 31-year-old lieutenant in the Saudi Air Force, Al-Bastani, he died this week in a car accident, just a few days ago, actually.
He died in a fist fight that went wrong.
Yeah.
Just like Khashoggi.
There was road rage.
Khashoggi, he just fell over.
Well, they said fist fight, and now they're saying he died in a chokehold. Yeah, there was an abduction gone wrong
as a result of the fist fight. Put him in chokehold, and then held him a bit too long, and his head fell off as a result of the chokehold. It was a very tight chokehold.
How about this?
And then they put him in an arm lock, and then his arm fell off. And they got him, they twisted his ankle. Oh, that fell off as well.
It keeps breaking. He was interviewed before he went to the Turkish embassy. I think it was on the day of, or close to it, by an Arab-Israeli journalist called Rula Jebriel. Got published this week in Newsweek. Parts of it anyway. When the interviewer suggested that the US might change their approach to Saudi Arabia at some point, Khashoggi agreed, albeit said that there's always a but. And this is a quote from him. "I am sure the Americans are not going to apply pressure on Mohammed bin Salman unless a true crisis happens in Saudi Arabia." That's like freaky given what happened to him a few days later. There's another thing that gets lost in the news, but 10 years ago it would have been a scandal, but now it's like, who cares? Somebody, I think a whistleblower for a private army outfit, US based, a mercenary fighting with them at some point, revealed that his employer, I forget the name, has been running operations in Yemen in recent years, targeting rebel/local politicians. They're a hit team, executive assassination team going around. And there's also a video that comes with it, maybe courtesy of this whistleblower. It's on SOT. I don't know where, I can't remember where we got it from. a video showing one of the operations. It's drone footage surveying the operation in progress, where it's a convoy that comes up to this guy's house, a local leader in some small city in Yemen. I think they failed the assassination because he wasn't in his house. Anyway, they get out of the convoy. They're all armed to the teeth, and you see them go up and plant a bomb at his house. And then a second one for good measure. They drive off, it blows up. And that got reported at the time as an Al-Qaeda suicide bombing in Yemen. And we just got a window right there to suicide bombing in the Middle East. Yeah, it's carried out by death squads.
Yeah,
paid in this case, but formally on behalf of the UAE, but it's basically a proxy American outfit.
Go back to 2005 and 2 members of the British SAS driving around Basra in Iraq at the height of the Iraq invasion, driving around in a car. 2 members, 2 white, fine British boys dressed in Arab garb, driving a car with explosives in the trunk and weapons, who get arrested by the Iraqi police and put in Basra prison. And then a British Abrams or British tank comes along and knocks down the wall of the tank and takes them out
of the police station.
Yeah, takes them away. These are 2 guys, members of British SAS, who were dressed like Arabs with a car bomb, driving towards a marketplace. There's an Al-Qaeda bombing in the making. Anyway, so that's like 13 years old now. So yeah, this is I don't know. It's hard to bring people along, I suppose. I don't know to what extent people have been brought along and the kind of stuff we've been looking at, but we've looked at it over and over again for 15 years now. There's just no doubt pretty much about many of the things that we say have been proven time and time again, that our view of the nature of this world, or the way that this world works, and the way that politicians in Western countries work, and the way that funding death squads, basically state terrorism as opposed to terrorism by some armed groups, that is the reality. It's state terrorism much more than anything else. But I understand people don't really like to live in a world where that's the reality. They don't like to believe that they live in a world where that's the reality, and then you get into a problem where they start believing other things, and it's all based in belief. And then how are you meant to have a discussion with someone when it's not about what's actually happening, but it's about what they want to believe? Well, you don't have a discussion anymore at all. You just stop having discussions.
It seems to be important, though, that this mode of being, these behaviors, remain secret, or at least plausibly covered over with a cover story. And the less and less they are, I'm not suggesting that means that they can't do it anymore. We're seeing the opposite. They become more brazen and just going ahead and doing it. But it comes back to what I was thinking about earlier. Like, I think they maybe forgot or don't care anymore about the original reasons for keeping quiet. Originally, you would do these things on the QT because of some kind of a recognition on their behalf that those moral issues those other people have, like most normal people, are an impediment. So we have to work around them. We can't confront them direct on, or they might rise up and overthrow us.
But they've been doing it for so long now, and it's become such a part of the fabric of the way that they do things and of the way the world works, that they've become used to them. And they maybe, they've forgotten about the fact that you haven't actually been telling the people about this. You've been actually covering it up all these years. For you and your little circles, you know that's what we do. Let's just plant a bomb there, and blame it on whoever. It's just normal. And it's an echo chamber, and they forget that actually the people still think that that you're the paragons of virtue, and that you're fighting a war against terrorism, And, I know you, the politicians, have come around and to understand and to accept clearly that actually you're the ones who are carrying out the terror attacks for the most part. But you need to remember, people don't think that. So don't get too complacent, don't get too familiar with your terroristic tactics and think it's the norm and think that everybody accepts it now, or think that you have, conditioned the people to such an extent that you can do whatever you want and that there's no line that you could cross that they would ever push back against or rebel against, You're playing a dangerous game, but, those people living in a world of make-believe where they are the reality creators, there's no talking to them either, They're going to do what they do, and it's all going to come out in the wash, I suppose. And it'll probably be a big mess of laundry. A big mess of dirty laundry. And nobody's going to like it. So, yeah. And in other news, there was, just to underline the kind of craziness, after the Judge Kavanaugh approval of Brett Kavanaugh as the Supreme Court judge, a bunch of witches in America, of which there are quite a few apparently, and they're serious people, cast a spell. We're getting together, I think today or yesterday, to cast a spell on Judge Kavanaugh to, I don't know, make him grow warts or something. I don't know what they're
make him vote the right way.
Who knows? We'll probably turn him into a frog or something. I don't know, something like that. But they were casting spells on him. But when a Catholic priest somewhere got wind of that, and he likes Kavanaugh, so he set himself up to, he's actually an exorcist. So he set himself up in opposition. So if you notice, if you're in the US, you don't know where these two groups of people are, but if you're in the US and you see something, kind of strange lights flying across the sky, or you hear loud clashes or booms, like some kind of major kind of battle going on in the heavens, it's probably what it is. It's the witches versus the priest in America doing battle over Trump. So that's where that's one little, insight into where, so it's partly where we're at right now.
Conventional war to nuclear war to proxy war to hybrid war to information war. Now we're in spirit wars.
Spirit wars, yeah. Okay. Magical workings. Catholic magical workings versus witchy magical workings. Black magic being tossed across at each other. I mean, who knows? Maybe,
might work.
It might work. It might have more. Yeah, it might actually have more reality to it than any of the bullshit that you see.
Wishful thinking of politicians.
Well, certainly it has more reality to it than the bullshit that defines the propaganda war. I would put more faith in the substance of witches versus priests and their magical workings than
the CIA and the MI6
or the magical workings that you get out of CNN and different news outlets. There's more truth to it. There's more substance to the witches and the priests than there is to CNN, basically. For the most part, especially when they're talking about particular things, Obviously, CNN reports on normal things that are actually true and stuff, but when and by CNN I mean all of the media in the US, when they get into, opinion pieces, it's an interesting point about opinion pieces, because there's a new internet police called NewsGuard.com, and it's fairly high level. It's media moguls, former bigwig news media execs and stuff who have set it up, and it's basically a website where you can go and you can download an app, or not an app, but a plugin for your browser, for any browser you use, and this organization have been going around vetting, asking questions of news websites to determine whether or not they're truthy enough, determine their level of truthiness, and then they give them a rating, and then they give them a badge. So if you download this add-on for your browser, when you go to any website or you see any news on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, it'll have a badge on it. If they've analysed that website, it'll have a badge, a green badge or a red badge. A green badge means it's truthy. Its truthiness is high enough, and if it's got a red badge, it's not very trustworthy. But one of the criteria they use to determine whether or not a news website is valid and gets a green badge is whether or not they separate news from opinion or fact from opinion. And obviously they're clueless in this respect in asking that question, because there's so much inherent bias in the media and in individuals, in human beings. There's inherent unconscious bias that everything is biased, unless it's a story about a cat stuck up a tree or some objective fact that happened. Anything that is related to politics, CNN or the Washington Post, the Washington Times, whatever, will put something forward as like just not an opinion piece. They'll call opinion piece opinion, but when they talk about something, when they report on some fact that happened, Judge Kavanaugh, whatever, they don't even know that there's ways that they slant the so-called objective news that means that their bias is already input into it. Little comment, the way they phrase the way they bring the headline, or the way they define the headline, but that'll be their factual news, and they're just so clueless about human nature and human psychology that they have no idea that there's bias in in absolutely everything, even in the story about a cat up a tree type thing. If they can spin something into it where it relates in somehow to Trump, the cat up a tree is, this is being related by some experts have related this to a lack of funding for, cats or something by the Trump administration or something like that. They'll cite experts or whatever. There's all different ways that they can bring in supposedly objective data that isn't objective at all to support their bias that they're putting into a non-opinion story. Right. So it's pretty sad. That's why it's.
I'm on the website now. It's actually NewsGuard Tech.
Yeah.
oneword.com.
If you look up NewsGuard, yeah. So they obviously
go to our advisory board.
Yeah.
Scotty, can you go to that? Our advisory board under About Why Trust Us. You want to trust these people because Tom Ridge,
First Secretary of Homeland Security under George W. Bush, and Richard Stengel, former editor of Time magazine and Under Secretary of State for Public Diplomacy in the Obama administration, retired General Michael Hayden, former director of the CIA, former director of National Security Agency, former principal deputy director of National Intelligence under George W. Bush, and Don Baer, chairman of Burson, Corn and Wolf, and former White House communications director for the Clinton administration. So they've got pretty much everybody on there, a few other people down the bottom. Speechwriter for Condoleezza Rice is on their advisory board. And these people are
all American,
right?
High level, and this is to be a global.
4,000 websites.
WatchGuard.
4,000 news websites that they're going to decide.
Get the red or the green light.
But they're going to pass judgment on. This is good for you. This is not good for you. Of course, people have to opt in the sense of downloading the add-on for their browser. But one of the more pernicious ways that their plan is. I mean, of course, they set it up as a way to avoid Facebook or Twitter or social media platforms having to outright ban people and remove the content, like fully censor them. And they say this way,
which they're doing anyway.
They're doing that anyway. But they're saying that they won't have to do this anymore, and they're getting money from Facebook and Twitter to fund this project and pay people to do it, so that these badges will appear on social media. It appears on if you have the plugin, it appears on Facebook or on Twitter, whatever. Anytime there's a news story, that badge is there, and you can click on it. You can see whether or not it's good or bad, and then you can go to the longer list of reasons why it's good or bad. But so they say it's to avoid having to ban them outright, and people can just get an idea of, I shouldn't trust this website because it's got a red badge. But they also say on their main page on newsguardtech.com that this will also allow advertisers to choose who they want to advertise with, i.e. they won't advertise with the people that we put a red badge on that we say that are untrustworthy, which means that those websites, probably a lot of them will disappear. So it is fully censoring and banning them just by different means, i.e. by depriving them of funding.
Right.
By shaming them effectively, or rather defaming them, defaming websites based on the subjective criteria or opinions of people like a former director of the CIA, who has no bias whatsoever, obviously.
No.
His opinion will decide whether or not any news website is good or bad, and then advertisers will not fund or not advertise on the bad ones that this former CIA director said was bad. And therefore, if their funding dries up, then they go away, they disappear, basically. So they have a list of 4,000 websites that they're going through.
It's smart. Because I was thinking, that's not going to fly with people, because when they see a red sticker next to the site they're visiting, that'll be actually a cue to them to use reverse psychology and go, I should check this one out. But advertisers are more likely to think of their bottom line. And, well, it doesn't look good for me with my investors, my partners, yada, yada. I better toe the line here. And you slowly, through economic means, strangle and reach the target you would otherwise have done by simply banning outright.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a typically Western way of getting around the core problem of trying to do what they're doing without coming across as total hypocrites when it comes to democracy, freedom of speech, yada, yada, yada,
yeah.
freedom of the press.
It obviously assumes, it's these people assuming that, and the actual people directly involved in that list of people we read out are advisors. I don't know what much input they have, but the people who are directly involved in it have been in the news industry, and they're all lefty news industries. So they're all very much anti-Trump. It's basically an anti-Trump, anti-conservative, anti-right-wing, anti-Russia propaganda, the standard American exceptionalist establishment opinion. And they've all decided that their opinion is the only right one. But ostensibly they're saying that ordinary people consuming the news cannot make up their own minds about what's true or what's not. They need to be told by authorities, this is bad, this is good. Only read this, don't read that. So that's an insight into the perspective of these kinds of people. And it's not just the elite, it's spread obviously down to the ordinary person who, the hangers-on and the people who jump on the bandwagon. They also think that they have the only right opinion. The activists and the left-wing anti-Trump activists and stuff, they have the only right opinion, and everything that they don't agree with, or people that don't agree with them, are simply wrong and need to shut up. So of course that's not true in any universe that one person can have the only right view of reality, but that's what these people have decided, and decided that they are going to decide for the people what they should and shouldn't see, because they don't want anything to appear on the internet. They don't want people of the world effectively to be able to digest or to receive information that these people don't want them to receive, that these people don't like. So it's like me saying, I have a view of the world and I don't want anybody else. I don't want any conflicting information, or information that I don't like or don't agree with, or conflicts with my view. I don't want anybody else in the world to see that information. I want that information extinguished. And I only want my view of how the world works and how life should work and how what way people should think. I only want that to exist effectively. I want to extinguish, erase all the rest of it, and that's what they're doing. That's these people at Newsguard Tech's perspective, and they are absolutely convinced that they are doing the morally right thing as well. Of course, they pull in a moral justification for it to make themselves feel better, because they don't want to think that they're being totalitarian or fascist. Right. So they see themselves as actually being, this is about liberty and freedom. So all of the terms are reversed. So people are acting in overtly totalitarian, clearly, overtly, like dictionary definition, totalitarian and fascist ways. These people actually very quickly find a way to turn that around and say that they're acting in exactly the opposite way.
It's completely insidious. And in other times, in other situations, in other contexts, a paternalistic worldview isn't always a bad thing. In the sense that people can be childlike about how things actually are and so on, about the degree of responsibility they're willing to take in terms of organizing, whether it's everything from the local community out to county, state, and then nation.
Some people want all the big decisions taken for them, and they're called authoritarian followers, who they need an authority to make those big decisions for them, right down to the point of deciding what's true and what's false, and tell them what's true and what's false. The problem is that not everybody is like that. There are a lot of people who feel and can make up their own minds about things, to decide how they're going to act in the world and live their lives by their own set of values, their own, that they've adopted themselves. And they don't want anybody else to tell them. And that's where the clash is going to come. That's where if you try to treat everybody like an ignorant child who doesn't know anything, and and force that on everybody, well, then the ones who aren't children are going to say, you know, F you.
I can see that you're a tyrannical parent.
Take your information.
Dysfunctional.
Yeah, and stick it up your.
Yeah.
And that's the response, and that's what that's a good, you know, it's the reason why you're seeing a lot of the conflict, this, you know, the discord in Western societies today, because of that division, because there are some people who want to be told, and it's not just that these people are innocent and they just want to be told everything. They become activists as well. They become ideologically identified with the authoritarian message that they need and they want, and then they become actively engaged in pushing that on other people. Kind of uniformitarianism, basically. We're all the same. We have to all be the same. We all have to see things the same way. And unfortunately, the people who tend to push that on other people are the ones who want an authority to define what's true and what's false, what's real, and to order society along strict lines. That the ones who can't do it for themselves want to push that on everyone else, you know.
Yeah. And given the variety of peoples and their needs, authoritarian followers versus independent people, the history of government is the history of striking a balance. And periodically, things just go way too far over this way. Of course, in the 20th century, that was most clearly seen with communism / socialist places like China, the USSR, where it went in its extreme, and it's had to, like Putin said in his analogy, I like that one, where if you pull the elastic too tight, it's going to snap back, right? The United States is going the same way. Of course, it's not couched in the same terms, but it's doing the same thing. The total overreach of government, of authority into what you can read, say. You say the wrong thing, you're off Twitter, or worse, you lose your job. What you think, everything is. It's an elastic, and right now it's pulled. Well, I imagine it's pulled at its maximum. Maybe there's a little bit more to go, but it's getting close. And the rebound when that thing lets go is going to be like,
there's two they can end up being two forms of oppression. You know, you have people in the times when the independent people rule type thing. Let's say by independent, I suppose I'm saying more able, because it is a value. It is a value judgment on people who are more able to decide for themselves.
They rule with a lighter touch.
Well, not necessarily. They can become oppressive, and they can oppress other people who are the more authoritarian follower ones, the ones who are more childlike and more malleable and influenceable. They can become oppressed by the more able people in society, you know, the people higher up, the dominance hierarchy, let's say. And then, but now we're, you know, and you had that in times gone by, but now we're swinging back towards the other direction, where it's the rise of the rise of the weaklings, basically, the rise of the least able in society. And unfortunately, they're being, at the same time, there's a coterie in the elite, in the political elite, and the governing elite, who have decided that that they'll take their side, you know, and promote obviously all this kind of oppression Olympics and kind of coddling of people in society, coddling them, wrapping them in cotton wool, and not allowing any oppression, and basically going to the lowest common denominator and deciding we'll start from the person who's the most sensitive and what offends them, and we'll start legislating there and move up, you know. So we'll get it all, catch all, basically, like the BBC talking about, you know, forcing their employees recently to be more kind of inclusive and to use gender pronouns and stuff, forcing BBC employees to use chosen gender pronouns and to be more inclusive in their speech and all that kind of stuff, you know, making it like workplace policy, like your job's at stake if you don't do this, you know, so that you do not offend anybody who could be in any way construed as being offended by anything. The government wants, big part of the government wants to legislate for that, and then it obviously has crept into business practices in many businesses, where, you know, that's the law of the business world as well.
It's a standard practice now in the United States when you get a job interview, and people are being asked to hand over their Facebook and social media logins so that they can be checked, like, or to at least give up their identity so that can be read or something like that. But even even more, it's something else. There's a deliberate. I got a taste of this when I was working in the corporate world, and I wonder how ubiquitous it is now. Where it was expected, it was never in the contract. It was never explicitly stated, but it was expected of you to turn up for social events in the evenings and then on the weekends.
That's super benign, though.
You think so?
Compared to today?
Yeah.
And compared to what we're talking about, like, yeah. I mean, that was all team building stuff and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, you could see that as just like the corporate heads trying to get people all to feel identified with their corporation, like we're one big family, you know, to start seeing each other as family members. That's just trying to leverage people so they'll invest more of their time and their energy and their focus into the company for increasing profits and stuff like that. You know, that's been around for a long time. But you know, I think the difference between the two is it's basically two sides of a coin. One is the obvious one that's known throughout history is the tyranny of the oppressor. But today what we're seeing is the tyranny of the oppressed. Which sounds like an oxymoron, but that's what's happening. It's the oppressed people who are taking the position of the oppressor.
But there are still tyrants, honest to God,
of course,
oppressive tyrants.
There are, yeah.
Behind them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, those people, either side of the coin is good for them, right? Yeah. Because ultimately they get to control as many people as possible, you know. But they always leverage the population they use the emotional juice of the population where they can to just to secure their positions as at the top of the heap, you know, where they can control as many people as possible because that's how they get their kicks out of controlling people as much as possible. It's kind of like an addiction, you know, where they just want more and more and more control. And that's behind the whole total information awareness. If you want to control large numbers of people, you have to know as much as possible about everybody.
Tom Ridge's project.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a pretty messed up situation we're in, you know. But we have to deal with it the best way we can.
Before we go, one other small news item from last week. Just, you know, minor detail. Don't worry too much about it. John Bolton suggested the US withdraw from a nuclear arms treaty with Russia, the INF, intermediate something to do with. There had been an anti-ballistic missile treaty for long range. That was torn up by George Bush Jr. In 2002, and this is like the other key plank in the strategic piece, I suppose, since the end of the Cold War. John Bolton says, Trump apparently just today or yesterday evening announces that the US is withdrawing from this other treaty. So that tears up a deal going back to 1988, which basically ended the Cold War and gave rise to 22 some years of Russia saying, yes, sir, whatever you want, sir, to exactly everything the US wanted. So that is over. So
well, Trump's saying that Trump has accused Russia of not adhering to it. I mean, it's a treaty that banned the deployment of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles on land between five that could that were had a reach of between 500 and 5,000 kilometers. Obviously, that'll be a kind of big thing because ballistic and cruise missiles that have that kind of reach on land are a threat to global security because you can put them wherever you want. But of course, America has got around that a lot by installing, different kind of missile systems on land around Russia's borders, all that kind of stuff.
On ships.
Well, you're allowed to do it in ships. That was never part of it, because you're meant because on ships you need to be able to protect your oceans, whatever, or offshore type of things. But onshore it was a problem, because it would obviously any country then could all point missiles at each other on each other's borders, short range ballistic and cruise missiles, But I think the real reason Trump doesn't like that anymore is because he wants to be able to deploy those against China. China's wasn't a treaty; that was just between the US, and that treaty was between the US and our Soviet Union, and now Russia and the US. But China was never a part of it, and I think they want the scope to be able to deploy those kind of missiles in Asia, in the Pacific region, against China to try and threaten China. He said he's open to renegotiating it, whatever, but but he wants to renegotiate. He wants to renegotiate that and include China in it as well. You know, because China's obviously arming itself up as well to protect its interests in the region. There's two other stories as well. Well, one that's just a kind of throwaway one. The US, I think it was the Pentagon, accused Russia of trying to steal Syria's oil. That's why it's in Syria.
Right.
I mean, I don't think much has to be said about that.
That's America, the Pentagon with its troops at Syrian oil fields.
Well, America ever accusing anyone of stealing oil is just like the biggest joke. And it's, you know, it should go down in history. It should be written in the annals of history as one of the biggest jokes. The massive pot
on his tombstone.
The massive pot calling the kettle black, you know. And the other one was that just a story about Siemens had a German company, big multinational company. Siemens has been spent a lot of time and money courting the Iraqi government over recent years for a 15 billion contract, a contract worth 15 billion for building power infrastructure in Iraq, and it was odds-on favourite to win the contract. Siemens was, except Washington intervened recently and forced Baghdad to choose US-based General Electric instead. That's Trump's art of the deal going on there somehow or other.
Shades of Berlin-Baghdad Railway.
Yeah.
Europe.
Yeah.
Get out. It's ours.
Right. Nothing changes, you know. Really, nothing really changes. And you just have to, you know, see through the freedom and democracy, modern society, modern world gloss and see that, you know, nothing changes. Go back 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years, you can go back 3,000 years.
They keep slagging Russia for being so 19th century gunboat diplomacy. You know, we're way beyond that now, and this is exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's not much else going on. There's just a load of dross. Obviously, that is inconsequential, really. I mean, obviously, you don't look to Facebook or Twitter to find what's important in the news these days, you know. But I think we try to just sum up the kind of major events for people so that they're informed on the major things. That if you feel like thinking about it or knowing about it, these are the things you should just, you know, maybe log somewhere, store away somewhere, and but everything else comes across your feed. You can just you know, cast a cynical eye on it and go, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Because there's a lot of crap out there, a lot of noise, and very little signal or substance. I think we'll leave it there for this week, folks. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you like the video, if you like our channel, like, subscribe, etc. We'll be back next week with another one. So until then, have a good evening.
See you next week. Bye, everyone.